Okay, in this tutorial I want to take you through the basics of applying some different kinds of images, or what's called image maps, to an object. In this case we'll use the cube. So we'll start with applying an image map, essentially just a picture of something to the cube. And I want you to note the orientation of this cube. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, and this cube's local orientation matches that. So if I, for instance, rotate the cube, its local orientation x and y is the same. So I'm going to clear that rotation with an Alt-R shortcut, and let's start applying an image to this top surface of this cube. So here in my material buttons, we'll check and see if it has a material. It indeed does. It's called material. If I press this little car, it will assign a name to it, gray. We're going to call it cube material. And just to show you can change that. So this is the links. This gives you valuable information here. This gives you things like color and all that. But since we're applying an image, we don't really need all that. What we need to do is we need to jump over to the Textures Subcontext button right here. And we need to enter something in the first texture slot. And you have several texture slots here. I believe there are 10. So the type of texture we want to add is an image. And I'm going to minimize that right there. We're going to load an image. I'm going to go and locate the image I want to load. And here I am choosing the image map JPEG. And here you can see a preview of what that looks like. I made it in Photoshop. It's yellow with some squiggly green. I put the word image map on it. Going to do go back to the subcontext for the textures. I'm sorry, for the materials. Go back to the material subcontext. I'm going to change our preview mode to a cube so we can see how that looks. And let's see if I can use the plus key to zoom in on that some more. Middle mouse click and drag to move it over. You can see from that image that we brought in, I'm going to split this here. Open a image editor, select that image. You see where the word image map is. It's been applied to this upper corner. So on this is the Y and this is the X, and it is applied to the Y and X, just like that. So here we should see it applied to the Y and the X. Now, in order to do a render of this, we need to be looking through our camera, and our camera is over here. So I'm going to go to a top view on this, and you may have noticed that this changed when I selected the camera. It is, since it's context sensitive and I select the camera, it is shifted to the world color settings or the world settings. But when I select the cube again, it will shift back to the materials for the cube. So the world settings are camera materials and camera settings and such. So I'm going to grab this camera, G key grab. I'm going to left click to place it. I'm going to R key rotate it. And I'm going to split this window with a right click over the divider, left click split, left click confirm. And I'm going to change this to a camera view by hitting the 0 on my number pad. I'm going to navigate inside the camera, G key, middle mouse, click once, and I'm going to slide in, G key, I'm just going to use my middle mouse to move around. Okay, and now I'm going to select the cube again with a right click. I'm going to zoom in on here to see what we've got. The camera is now coming at this thing from the same orientation as this, and that's going to make it a little less confusing, as if that wasn't confusing enough right there. So now if we do a render on this, and I'm going to use the render current frame menu, you will see that the image map word there is on the same part of our cube as it is in the preview. Okay, so one thing that we're also dealing with in this scene is a lack of light. So I'm going to G-key grab this, left click to place it. I'm going to duplicate it with a Shift D. I'm going to change this to a front view, number 1 on the number pad. And I'm going to move these up and change back to a top view. And now let's try a render on that again. Still would like some more light on the front of this. I'm going to hit escape to get out of that. Let's see, let's take one of these lamps, move it back, and let's change its setting to global orientation. Click on this blue arrow and bring it down. Let's see, we'll put it right there. Alright, let's try this now. And I use the hotkey F12. Alright, now we've got the sides of this thing illuminated. What Blender has done here is, in addition to applying this to the top of the cube, it has also stretched the pixel on the edge down the side. You can see some of the green stretching on the side here. Alright, go ahead and minimize that. I'm going to go into my render buttons, and I'm going to reduce the percentage size of my render so it's not so big. Right there, to 50%. Now, if I hit F12 to render, I get a smaller window. It's not going to take so much time and so much of our screen. Alright, let's look at a couple of different things now that we can do with this. Select the cube, so we're in the right context. Go on the material buttons and the material subcontext. I'm going to minimize the links and pipelines, minimize the materials and ramps. I'm going to minimize the shaders for right now. And let's look at the mini menu for the texture settings. We've got the texture slots, and here I can give this a name, and it has chosen the name of the image file when I click the car for automatic naming. I could also type a name in there, but that's handy just to give it a unique name. On the map input, this is telling Blender what kind of coordinates to use to apply the texture. Orco is original coordinates, or the orientation of the actual cube itself with respect to itself. If I used some of these others, for instance, I could use object. I could use some other object in the scene to handle the orientation of the texture. I could use the global coordinates, sticky coordinates, the window, the normal, which is that which way the face is facing, the reflection coordinates, tangent, stress. Lots of different things we can do. But let's right now just deal with these 4 buttons right here. Flat means that it's going to apply flat on the X and Y axis, and what Blender is doing is it's applying here, the edge is bleeding down, and then it's also applying it to the other side. So you've got, down on the other side, you've got image, and you've got the picture down the bottom. So if we choose cube, it's going to project this from all the different sides onto the surface. And it's almost like a projector. It's blasting it on there. Well, here it looks correct. It says image map right there. And if I can make this really large, maybe we can see that. It says image map right there. Here it says image map, but it's backwards. So it's actually correct on the back side of this. So it's applying from the positive Z, from the positive Y, and from the positive X. Okay, a lot of details there, but just it does make sense once you understand what it's doing. Tube is going to kind of wrap this around. Might be better to look at, I don't know, sphere wouldn't be good. We don't really have a cylinder in here, so tube is wrapping around like a soup can label. Now spherically, let's change this to a ball, it's wrapping it around like it was wrapping around a ball. Okay, so that's what those do. Okay, now let's just go back to flat like that. Now we can also tell it, like right now for instance, it is mapping to the X and the Y. It's projecting along those. If we were to flip those, the Y and the X for instance, it's going to take what was along the edge of X and put it on the edge of Y. Therefore we get it flipped over. So actually to make this look right, you'd have to change the sizing to a negative for this slot. And then you'd get what appears to be like a rotation do here. And now you can also adjust things like sizing here. Let's set this to 2 for dimensions. And now we're repeating it twice on there. Let's set it to 5. And it's repeating 5 times. Now let's put it back the way it's supposed to be, X and Y. It's repeating 5 times across this way. And now if we hit 5 there, it's repeating 5 times this way and 5 times that way. So, let's see, put that back at 1. Put that back at 1. Now, I talked to you about how this is actually a gray cube, and it's bleeding this yellow pixel down the side. If we go back to the texture subcontext, and let's see, we'll minimize that and maximize the map image. We've got a couple of settings here, such as extend, clip, repeat, so forth. Now, if we choose repeat, then we're able to do what we said. We're able to get it to repeat on the cube, or extend. We'll do the same thing. It will extend to the edges. But if we clip it, and then let's go back here and take a look at what happens when it's clipped. We're going to clip it by increasing these numbers, which is essentially increasing the X and Y mapping space. So you kind of got to think of it a little backwards. If you increase these numbers, your image is going to get smaller, because this has to do with the input for the mapping. But trust me, if you do it the wrong way and it does the wrong thing, you go the other way. Okay, so you can see now what's happening is, rather than bleeding down the side, we're actually affecting the size of this image. We're not cropping it, but it's appearing to be reduced on this surface. So let's do a render of that. And you can see it's no longer bleeding down the sides. Now we'll put it back all the way to the edge. And once it hits the edge, you can see that color is bleeding down the sides. And if we make it even bigger like that, let's see, you can see that even this word image map here is bled down the side. So there are some of the controls for flat image mapping.